the meeting to order, the Board of Adjustment. If we could stand and do the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, if we could have the roll call.
Member Chase?
Here.
Member Garshaw?
Here.
Member Mulholland?
Here.
Member Small?
Here.
Vice Chair Bomar?
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right. We need to approve the agenda for today.
I make a motion that we approve the St. Pete Beach Board of Adjustment meeting for April 24th, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, anybody who has audience comments today, if you fill out one of those cards, and then the city clerk is going to swear you in. If there's anybody that wants to speak to anything today.
Not sure if we're going to need to speak yet.
If you anticipate potentially speaking, then you should stand and raise your right hand.
Okay. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the information or factual representation that you are about to give or present to the board is truthful?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, if we can have the approval of the minutes for the March 27th meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes for March 27th.
Second. Second?
Yeah, there was a second.
Okay. Roll call.
Member Garshaw?
Yes.
Member Mulholland?
Yes.
Member Small?
Yes.
Member Chase?
Yes.
Vice Chair Bomar?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Do we want to do the election of officers before we do anything else?
It's usually standard when we have new appointees after the election. Obviously, welcome our new board member. Yes, it is appropriate to appoint a chair and a vice chair.
Okay. Do we have a motion for anybody for chair?
I can also discuss it too if you'd like before.
Does anybody have an interest in taking it off?
I'll keep on, I don't mind.
Okay.
I guess the only thing I would say that anybody that we appoint to be our leaders, that we have some acknowledgement that they're going to be here for most of the meetings, or we have the schedule now that they at least anticipate being here based on what the schedule is. That would be the only thing I would ask of whoever's going to accept the positions, that they pretty much be committed to be here most of the time.
I think we've done a
I
pretty
think
good
it's
job.
important to the residents and to the staff that we have a quorum for these meetings.
No doubt about it.
That would be the only thing I would say.
Okay.
I
Any
know
other?
we reviewed the calendar recently, Mike, and I think you didn't have any conflicts.
No,
moving
I
forward.
didn't have any
So
conflicts.
I'm very supportive of you staying on.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Don't know if that was really a motion, but you.
I'll make a motion to maintain Mike Bomar, and as vice chair, would you like to move into the chair position? I guess that's a clarification
two.
because you're sitting in
Correct.
the
Right.
chair seat today.
So the motion would be to appoint Mike Bomar as the chair of the Board of Adjustment for 2024-2025.
Perfect. I'll make the motion to move Mike Bomar into the chair position for 2024 to 2025.
I second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Do we have any
At this
discussion for
time.
vice chair?
Well, if Denise was willing to do it, I would like to nominate her.
I'd be happy to.
I'll second the motion.
I don't think I officially nominated her, but I will nominate Denise.
I move to
I move to
appoint
appoint
Denise Chase as the vice chair.
as the vice chair for the Board of Adjustments.
I'll second that. Roll call? Or all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Okay.
well done.
Here we go. We're ready for the first case then?
That we are. I absolutely am. I think once the case number is read. So we're moving on to item 4 B, case number 24017, 7100 Blind Pass Road. Before we get started on the staff's presentation, I would like to go through any ex parte communications the board members have had. This would include site visits, emails, communications, anything outside of the record, any knowledge you obtained outside of what will be presented today that may or may not be used for your decision.
No.
None?
Are we referring to the first case only or all
Correct.
three?
So we'll do it case by case.
Okay, fine. Yes, I've driven by the property once. I've walked it as well. And I did receive the one email that was provided by staff when I arrived here today.
Okay.
Yeah, I did a drive-by. I didn't have any communication with the residents, but
Did you receive the email from staff?
the letter,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, I did do a drive-by. I met with staff, and I've reviewed the documentation that was provided in our packet.
Thank you.
I've driven by the property and read the email that was provided.
Okay. Appreciate that.
Okay, Kristen?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kristen Coleman, Community Development Director. And if I could have the presentation, please. Okay. We're going to start off with variance case number 24017, located at 7100 Blind Pass Road. The request is a practical difficulty variance. Sean Neal for Jennifer Goss requests to permit the existing non-conforming 6-foot-high fence with existing 3-foot front yard setback to remain within the front yard, where a 4-foot-high maximum height is permitted and a 10-foot front yard setback is required, and seeking relief from Land Development Code Section 6.15. Listing of exhibits. Here is an aerial of the property. The subject property is outlined in red. It is a corner parcel located at the intersection of Blind Pass Road and 71st Avenue. It contains a single-family residence and surrounded by single-family residences to the north, south, east, and west. The property is located in the DCR Downtown Core Residential Zone, also DCR on the future land use map. The applicant requests to permit the existing non-conforming 6-foot-high fence with the existing 3-foot front yard setback to remain within the front yard, where a 4-foot-high maximum height is permitted and a 10-foot front yard setback is required. So there is a little background on this application and some code enforcement issues. The variance submission is of the request due to an after-the-fact permit that could not be issued by zoning, and part of code enforcement case number 2023-0619, and that was opened on actually Halloween of last year for construction of shell within the city right-of-way, parking on surface within the right-of-way, an unpermitted fence, and erecting an illegal sign and within the right-of-way. All other issues, with the exception of the fence, have been addressed at this time. So here is a survey showing the existing conditions. Within the rectangle at the bottom shows the fence that is now located parallel to 71st Ave as it currently exists. And here is a survey that was presented by the applicant and owner from 2020 showing the prior fence location. So if you also look within that red rectangle, you can kind of see that it meanders, or it has a little zigzag to it. And this is just a little helpful, so you don't have to eye weld, but here's a comparison between the 2020 and 2024, a little bit of a close-up. So here's the history. I did use some Google Streets images, just going back as far as 2011, 2018, 2019, and 2022. Just so you could see kind of how this evolved. Again, this is an after the fact. The permit was not, given or issued or granted, nor could it have been at the time. So they're seeking relief. Now we're going to bring you on to the property. So notice was completed as required, the legal ad published, and notices mailed on April 10th, and signs posted on April 17th. Now, because this is a corner lot and it butts more than one street, notices are posted along each street. Again, as a corner lot, it has two fronts. So the top left is Blind Pass Road, and it serves as the main entry of the dwelling. and the bottom right is 71st Ave fence location. So another thing to note with this property, even though they front, technically their entry is on Blind Pass, by our land use definition, whatever is the smallest dimension is actually the front yard. And the larger one, which would be Blind Pass Road, is their secondary front. So sometimes there's different setback requirements versus a secondary front. So I just wanted to make that clear, that the one where the fence is located on 71st is actually considered the front. This is the adjacent property to the north, single-family residence, and adjacent property to the west, also single-family. And here's just an overview of the existing fence taken from the opposite side of 71st. Going inside the fence, this is a current view, so this would be looking west. Here is another angle of the property. And here is within the center rear yard, looking south towards the fence. And just spinning and then looking north where the applicant has, and the homeowner has their pool and other accessory features. So this is the variance criteria and comments that were located within your staff report. And then staff comments, the applicant should be prepared to provide their own testimony and respond to staff comments below. The applicant should provide some testimony as to the history of the fencing, as previously there was a fence installed not parallel to the property line or street and was reconfigured and additional fencing installed to be parallel as shown in the current condition. Staff finds the request will not have an adverse impact on the neighborhood and find the interest of justice will be served in granting the variance. And staff does recommend approval with the following condition. Installation of landscaping in front of the fencing comprising of shrubs and hedges to visually soften the height, mass, and scale of the fence in conformance at a minimum with Land Development Code Section 22.42, with landscape inspection completed and approved by zoning prior to the issuance of a final inspection or certificate of occupancy, because they would need to gain the fence permit based on, should you approve it. That is all I have for you. If you have some questions for me, I know that the applicant is here as well. Oh, and before I go even further, sorry, we did get one letter with regards to this application, and it was in support, which you received as well.
Okay.
Thank you, Kristen.
So were the violations previously, it was the current owner that committed those violations?
I do believe so, yes.
Did they resolve them quickly when notified, or?
I do believe they worked with staff, code enforcement, but they all have been rectified at this time.
Within 1 day.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Would the applicant like to come forward and just explain anything to us?
All of that I can say is back
Can you
in
state your name?
Sean Neal. We purchased a house in 2020, just before COVID and all that. So they were still doing the construction down here on Blind Pass, trying to open it up. Then after COVID, then everything got shut down. So while we're in the middle of trying to get this place together, all we went on was all the people working up and down the road and people that we had access to from the city that were constantly up and down through there. So also the fence, the only reason why it was even messed with to begin with, on the outside of it, there were some old tree stumps, and we had those removed because it was all overgrown. Once we seen all these stumps, there was a big water line that the previous owners had run that nobody knew anything about, and it busted, and it just destroyed that whole side of the yard over there. So, and then of course aesthetically the fence looked like not very good. So that was the only reason once we fixed that, and that's why we did the shell there. It was quick, easy, didn't have to worry about cutting grass or adding extra irrigation or anything like that. And then the fence again was just to straighten it up and just make it look aesthetically.
Was the previous fence of the same height of the?
Yes. Yeah, it was always a 6-foot vinyl fence. It was just all over the place. And after we've cleared out brush, that's when we found out, and it was because of tree stumps. They just went around the tree stumps. which made no sense. So, but other than that, I mean, we had a no parking sign up because we had some issues with a neighbor when they purchased a house next door. They kept parking and blocking our driveway. So not the shell, but our actual driveway. They were just parking up and down the street. So put a parking sign up there, or no parking sign up, and that's what started all this. So.
The sign?
But like I said, as soon as we got the notice about the sign, and I was up here, I think the next morning, I think I was up here, so, and been trying to work with Kristen and everybody else, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Do you,
I have a
yeah.
couple questions, if
Okay.
it's all right with you.
Sure.
Sir, so you're not the owner, is that correct?
It's my ex-wife.
Or your ex-wife?
Yes.
But you're representing your ex-wife?
Yes.
Well, that's interesting, but I guess that's fine.
It's a long
Is your
story.
ex-wife here to testify?
No, sir, she's actually at the house still. We just got her out of the hospital yesterday, so she couldn't be here.
I hope she's doing okay.
Yeah, she's getting better.
So, to your knowledge, has there been previous variances on this home?
Nothing that I know of. Like I said, when we bought the house, it was, I believe it was empty for well over a year. I mean, I'm assuming, I think it might have been longer than that, but I think the previous owners had passed away, and then that's when we bought it, and like I said, the whole place was just, it was an eyesore there for a while, so.
Okay.
So other than the violations that the city planner noted, there's been no other violations on this property based on your...
We had a problem when we had a pergola installed on the other side of the house, because we couldn't find any kind of ruling or anything like that. But as soon as they came and told us about it, and we had the plans, drew up for it, submitted it, had the permit pulled, and everything was...
You know the city building is only a couple blocks from that house, right?
Oh, I know that.
So the fence that was there, you basically removed that and you put a new fence in, essentially straighten it out, and I think you said you removed some stumps and things like that. Is that
Right.
Did you just assume because it was a 6-foot fence that it must be okay?
Well, the person at that time, it was
I don't think we
Caitlin.
need to go into what he assumed, or, I mean, we're here to either permit the fence
I
or
mean,
not permit it.
I'll be glad to answer.
That's respectfully, Chair, any board member can ask any
I
question.
understand that, but, you know,
I mean, we have a fence that's not compliant.
right.
Every week we come to, or every month we come to these meetings, and we find ourselves in positions where things have been approved that we really don't want to make it difficult for the homeowner, so we approve things that technically aren't within code. I'm just trying to have...
That's what this board does.
I understand that. I
Right.
appreciate you for the education, too. But what I'm trying to understand is, if the property owner made no effort to determine if the fence was okay or not,
And
I'm less inclined to cut them some slack. I mean, like I say, every month we come in here and we're approving stuff that doesn't meet
So, but he
code.
replaced a fence that was already there.
That's correct.
I think he's willing to answer the question.
Yeah.
yeah, at that point,
And I take issue with not being able to ask my
Well,
question.
no, I just think there's,
I'm not a blind lemming here for you.
I'm not trying to say you
I'm a
are.
representative just as you are.
That's right. And you're
So you
asking him
answer-
how he felt about putting up the fence. If he knew it was against the law, is what you're asking him.
Let's let the applicant
yeah,
answer
I
the
can
question.
give you some clarity real quick. At that point in time, when that fence was getting done and everything was getting cleaned up, these offices were closed because of COVID. And just like I said previously, the only people I had contact with was everybody, city engineers, that were up and down this road constantly, every day. If you guys live here, I'm sure you know. I went off of, you had Caitlin, you had Bill, you had Lynn, you had, that's the people I was able to speak to without I mean, you couldn't come in here. You couldn't get any answers. So all I had to work with is the people from this city. And every move, even from painting the house, can we paint the house? Can we do it these colors? I mean, we asked for everything. But again, these offices were closed.
It was a very challenging time
No,
for everybody, let alone trying to renovate a house, so I understand the
Yeah,
frustration.
I mean, it was crazy times.
I understand, sir.
And, but just to let you know, I just didn't go there and big willy saying I can do this and I can do that. I asked to do everything.
I appreciate you answering the question.
No problem.
I have a question. I know the comments were made about the recommendation to approve, but contingent on some installation of landscaping. Does that sound like something that,
Yeah, me and Kristen had talked about that before.
Okay.
And that's, yeah. I didn't want to put grass in, because that was one of the options, just because I don't want to maintain it, because I don't like the sprinklers, and I don't, you know, I barely have any grass as it is, so.
Okay.
I've got just a little bit behind the fence, but I'm not, well, I'll put up trees, brush, whatever you want. I'm not opposed to that.
Okay.
I
Okay,
think
thanks.
staff's recommendation to soften the blow was put
Yeah.
very well.
And I think, Kristen, I think you gave me sheets with all the different things.
you did? Unless there's any other comments, I can make a motion.
Okay, well, just a second. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Do we have anybody in the audience that wanted to comment on this?
Got my mother-in-law here. She just don't want nobody to take her garden.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Do you mind coming
Please
to the
come.
microphone?
Purely selfish, but I have a son. that-
Sorry to cut you off, ma'am. Can you just say your name for the record?
Janice Goss.
Okay, thank you.
I have a son who lives with us. He's 43. He has a mental deficiency. I work with him all the time. I have Sean help me fix, or Sean did it, fix me some raised flower beds. So Chris and I make a little garden there. And I'm trying to teach him when I'm gone, you know, if he needs to grow some food, he'll know how to do it. So that's why I say I'm being selfish, because I do work with him quite a bit. And that is the only little yard space we have.
Thank you for
Okay.
sharing.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay.
Discussion?
Anyone else? Seeing none, public comments closed, and
Do we have any board discussion or?
I mean, I think this is an instance where they beautified the property. It was a really challenging time to get direction from the city. When they got direction from the city that they had done things wrong, they fixed things that were, you know, bothering the neighbors, and this has nothing but support from the neighbors that we've received. So I'm very supportive of letting them maintain their
I
fence.
think if they do a little landscape in the front
Yeah.
and soften the blow of the height of the fence, it will be just fine.
Okay.
Is that going to be included in the conditions?
Yes.
So whoever makes a motion needs to include that in the conditions, I believe. Is that not correct,
Correct.
Mr. City Attorney?
correct. If we're talking about the recommended condition, then I would say I move to approve variance blank with the condition recommended by staff. It does need to be in the motion. Thank you.
Okay, well, I move to make a motion that we approve the variance for case 24017 with the recommendation intact, as described by staff.
I'll second.
Second.
Okay.
Ready?
Roll call?
Member Mulholland?
Yes.
Member Small?
Yes.
Yes.
Member Garshaw?
Yes.
Chair Bomar?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, we'll go to
Mr.
K.
Chair, I'd like to, I don't know if you'd call this a point of order or not, but City Attorney, please correct me if what I'm saying is inappropriate. Since we don't have a case in front of us right now, I want you to understand, I don't work for you, I work with you. So you're not going to muzzle me if I have questions to ask.
I'm not trying to muzzle you.
Well, there's 2 meetings in a row you've done that, so, you know, you've been here the longest. I defer to you to be the chairman. I'll give you due respect, but you need to give me due respect.
Okay, I think you're kind of getting out of line. So let's move this.
Okay, we're here We're all board members. Everyone's allowed. I mean, this is the only time you guys can talk about these things. The reality is. So I think once we handle both of these items at the end, I was already going to kind of bring up possibility of a workshop or something so that we can all kind of talk through how these procedural aspects should occur. But I don't need to remind you, you know, there's decorum towards each other and there's ethics that we have to abide by. And respectfully, if any one of you have a question, you should ask it. That's the whole point of this meeting. So.
Okay, let's move on to case number 23086.
So before we get started, I'd like to go through the ex parte disclosures.
I have none. I
Okay.
have none.
I viewed the property from the street. I spoke to staff because I had a question of any potential follow-on permitting that would be required were it to be approved by the board. And I also, while I'm very familiar with the area and I'm an avid boater, I did take my boat by not only this dock, but many of the adjacent docks, just to get a clear understanding of the specific request and how it married up in relation with what else is out there. So that's my ex parte.
Thank you.
And if I may go back, I boated by it and paid attention to the.
Okay.
To the
If you could
dock.
just try to speak into the microphone. I heard you for that, but just moving forward.
I had none.
None.
I did drive by the site, met with staff, and reviewed all the documents.
Okay.
I have none.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Kristen?
May I have a presentation, please? Okay. Moving on to variance case number 24086, applicant owner Tyson Rawson from Edge Marine Construction for Peter Eagleson, property located at 2191 East Vina Del Mar Boulevard. And the applicant requests an unnecessary and undue hardship variance to construct a 6-foot by 12-foot lower landing on a non-conforming existing dock, creating a length of 92 feet 6 inches, where 49 feet is permitted and 86 feet 6 inches currently exists, requesting relief from Land Development Code Section 6.23D3. Listing of exhibits. The subject property is outlined in red. It is a waterfront parcel with single-family residence to the north and south, Vina Del Mar Boulevard, and a single-family residence use to the west, and Paso Grill Channel to the east. The property is located within the RU1 zone, RU on the future land use map. And again, the variance request detail to construct the 6-foot by 12-foot lower landing on the non-conforming existing dock, creating an overall length of 92 feet 6 inches. It should be noted with docks within the Land Development Code, Section 6.23, that the requirements may be varied administratively, provided that a signed statement of no objection from the abutting property owners is provided with the building permit application. In this case, the abutting property owner to the right or south did not sign a statement of no objection requiring variance approval to be sought. So it's a little different than just our usual, and I just wanted to make that clear.
So can we just clarify that?
Sure.
So if we can go back,
Yep.
just for the record. So had a no objection been signed by the abutting property owners, would this case be here today?
No.
It would have been administratively,
It would have been administratively approved and also approved by the county.
okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
So, speaking of prior Board of Adjustment approval, this property was formerly the recipient of the variances, variance case number 21088 in 2021, where they were granted another unnecessary and undue hardship to construct a residential boat lift to the left of the dockhead to be 84 feet from the seawall, where 49 feet was permitted, in addition to remove and rebuild the dock in the previous permitted footprint of 86.5 feet in length. This work was completed in May of 2022. And just also to note, it should be noted that the abutting property owner to the right, again south, did not sign the statement of no objection in 2021, requiring it to come before this board at that time. So with this property, there's a lot happening. Currently, it's not just the dock that they're looking for. They do have some current permits that they have either open or under review. There are 2 building permits for additional work being undertaken. In addition to the variance request, the demolition and removal of the existing rear concrete patio per plan, install a new in-ground concrete swimming pool, pool equipment, paver decking and walkways, pool equipment, which a portion of the survey showing the scope of work is provided below or on your screen. And it was approved with conditions that the property come into compliance to meet the requirement for at least 24% green space per section 22.4F of the Land Development Code. So with that in connection, zoning will conduct and pass the final landscape inspection in conjunction with the final building inspection to verify the ground cover has been installed as required. So you will see pictures of the current status, or if you drove by, there's not a lot of greenery, but because of the scope of work that the applicant or homeowner is looking to do, he was to come in compliance with that. Also, with any unnecessary and undue hardship, if they come before you, staff also does look to make sure that requirement is met, because that is a requirement also within the Land Development Code. But should you not approve this or support it, he still is coming into compliance with the pool permit.
Got it.
Just trying to, oh, okay. Just to kind of put that on the record as well.
So all of the prerequisites to be here today have been met.
That is correct.
Thank you.
This is a current survey of the property. Again, this does not reflect at the time of submittal, but this does not reflect the approved improvements with the pool and everything that you saw on the previous slide. And here is just a close-up of the request. That was also included in the staff report, showing the overall length of 92 feet 6 inches. Okay, going to bring you onto the site. Notice was completed as required, legal ad published, and notices mailed on April 10th, and signs posted on the property on April 17th. And here is the current front of the dwelling. This is the adjacent property to the south, a single-family residence. And headed north, here is the adjacent dwelling. We're going to jump right to the back of the dwelling from the seawall looking west. And here's just some other pictures taken, one from the north side of the seawall looking south, and that would be from the southern portion looking out over the existing dock. Here's looking at the southern property that did not sign the letter of
No objection.
yes, of no objection, thank you. And I just wanted to note that they currently do not have a dock at that property. So here's a profile view of the existing dock that was recently completed in May of 2022. And walking out to the end of the dock, looking west, and the boat lift. So this picture is kind of interesting because I stood at the edge of the dock and I just wanted to have a viewpoint looking south so you could see how this lines up with the length of the adjacent docks as you go around. And then this was looking north. And then we're going to go overhead, and so you can kind of see it does have that kind of curvature to it, but I wanted you to see overall the Google Earth image in proximity to the subject property. So with the variance request, there are criteria and comments that were located within the staff findings report that the applicant also had to provide the justification to, that was included. The applicant should be prepared to provide their own testimony and respond to the staff comments. The applicant should provide an overview of the proposed project, including but not limited to why the homeowner is requesting the additional lower dock and what challenge currently exists requiring the proposed additional bumper piling. Particularly, the applicant should address how the lower landing and bumper piling would result in an increased safety as stated in the application, and why the safety would not be equally provided by orienting the lower landing to the southwest side of the dock head, instead of going out if they oriented it to the side. Also, any information on the reasoning as to why the adjacent property owner did not provide a statement of no objection should be provided. The supplied profile view does not provide any information of the mean high water, mean low water, and bottom, and testimony should be provided to be added to the record. The applicant should provide testimony as to what options were explored to be constructed that would not require the length to be increased within compliance, and if any alternate plans have been developed should the variances not be granted. Staff finds that the applicant has addressed some of the hardship criteria, but has not specifically addressed conditions that are particular to the property, nor demonstrated all criteria for hardship have been met. So due to the lack of support within the submittal documents, staff recommends requesting more information from the applicant. And staff requests that the applicant verbally address the hardship faced in requesting the installation of the landing and the piling, in addition to the circumstances to return to the board requesting additional relief. If the applicant cannot provide substantial evidence through testimony, staff finds the proposed variance relief sought does not advance the purposes of the Land Development Code Section 1.1 or granting of the variance from the Land Development Code Section 6.23D3, and then staff would recommend denial of the request.
Okay.
We did not receive any letters in support or against.
Thank
Does
you,
the board
Kristen.
have any questions for Kristen?
You did make mention that the neighbor to the right is not affected by this. Is that correct?
So we're looking at the property.
As far as setback goes?
So, correct, like,
Okay.
it would meet the setback requirement for that, yes.
And the north neighbor approved with the setback.
Yes,
neighbor.
yep, there was a signature, and that was included in your packet as well.
Could we go back to the photos,
Sure.
the very end, the last couple photos? Okay, so that one, that to me reflects accurately on the positioning of this dock, but could you go back to the next one?
Sure.
So that's looking to the neighbor to the north dock, and the way that photo shows, it makes it appear as if he's already further out than that neighbor. At least that's how I interpret that picture if I didn't really know what it looked like out there. So I think that's a little bit deceiving. I just want my fellow board members to, if they focused in on that photo, they would say, well, this guy's already further out than his neighbor, but he's not, which is clearly evident if you go to the next photo. And I just wanted to make a point.
Sure. So I can also tell you, as part of the prior approval for the variance, the information provided, I can't get up there, but that was showing that the adjacent, and I cannot confirm by this, but it showed the adjacent property to the north was 87 feet, where he got approval for 86.6. So it's a difference of 6 inches. So if that changed between, you know, when this was signed in 2021 to now, I can't say whether or not, but this was based off of information that I looked at when looking at lengths.
Yeah, I'm just referencing
Sure.
out into the water where a boat might strike it or something. Is
Okay.
Not the feet, but
Okay.
from a out in the channel perspective.
Kristen, can you just comment, is the length of this dock in line then with all the neighbors who actually have docks?
So currently, I think the adjacent neighbor to the north at the 87 feet is the longest that I saw. Again, just trying to estimate it from Google Images and, you know, trying to look through, you know, building permit files. Might not find everything for him, so it's a best guess, but yeah, it would be in line as what it is existing now.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any more questions or comments? Would the applicant like to come forward, and if you could state your name and address for the record?
Tyson Rawson with Edge Marine Construction, and representing Pete Eagleson, the homeowner, who is also here. Going to the length of the next door neighbor, we built that one as well. I believe that one is 92 feet, the neighbor to the north. Just so we're clear, I'm pretty sure that that's the case. To give a little background on the dock that's out there now at Pete's house, or Pete Eagleson's house, the original permit, the dock was originally permitted in 1984, as the way it sits right now. It's been rebuilt twice, once in 1996, and then again when we built it in 2022. It does go beyond what the city allows for the length setbacks, but since it was previously permitted, we were able to go back and not have to get signatures from either neighbor to rebuild that. It's essentially grandfathered in, so it's more of the path of least resistance, especially if you have a neighbor who's not willing to sign the necessary variances for it. In 2022, when we came here for this same hearing, it was to place a boat lift in place of an existing wet slip that was out there. So that was the only reason we came for that. The dock that was built in '96 that we replaced had pretty severe storm damage. It was basically unusable. So when we went back and rebuilt the new dock in 2022, we built this dock a foot taller than the existing seawall, which is per code, you're allowed to go a foot higher than St. Pete Beach. So in doing that, it's a foot taller than what was existing there before. And then we put in the boat lift. So now, with Pete using the dock more and more and changing up the backyard to make it more usable, that dock is now a foot higher, and the whole dock is the same length all the way out. So now that he's going to have using the boat lift more, have more people out there, it's a pretty high. If you were to happen to fall off the dock or fall off a boat, it's a pretty tall climb to get up there. So the reason we're proposing this lower landing after we've already built the dock is now that he's used it more, we can see that there is kind of a safety issue with us building it higher. And to go back to building it higher, not to keep droning on about this. The reason it was built higher initially was to protect it from higher storm surges when those come in. It got the hell beat out of it last time. So to keep it out of the water, or to keep it out of danger, we built it higher. But now, with it being high, if someone were to fall off, it's difficult to get up. So we proposed building the lower landing closer to the water. So if, in case someone did fall down, climbing up a ladder, saving them an extra 2 feet would make it a hell of a lot easier for someone if that were the case. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but you never know. So that's the reason for the request of the lower landing. It's not to have the longest dock on the block. It's nothing like that at all. It's just to have a safer platform if something bad were to happen. Getting on and off of a boat, if you have guests over, stuff like that. That's the basis of it.
Okay.
And is the reason that landing can't be to the south as opposed to out?
I mean, we could build it that way, yes, but you have an incredibly strong current that goes through there. So if you have an ingoing or outgoing tide, if you were to come up to the side of that dock with a boat, you're either going to be pushed hard into the dock, or you're going to be pushed far away where you're having to sit there and just throttle back and forth to try to keep it in place. Being able to put the nose of the boat into the current would make it a lot easier if you were accessing it to and from a boat.
And that is a big safety issue. If people are getting on and off the boat and being bounced against the dock or pushed away. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Anybody have any questions for?
No, you asked the question I was going to ask.
Did you have any information why the adjacent neighbor won't
I
sign?
don't know. I know there was attempts made. Do you have any? I don't know. Some neighbors just don't want to. I mean, I can't without prying.
No objection, just not willing to.
Well, I mean, so when you hand them the letter, you show them the site plan. There's a second page that's part of the letter of no objection that they have signed and notarized. So it was delivered to them a few times because they live out of state as well. So it was sent by mail, knocking on the door. But again, we didn't have it the first time either, so it was not unexpected.
Okay.
But the effort was made.
Just, Kristen, clarification. So when they came for the first time, the variance that they received was solely for the slip. They didn't, because they were grandfathered in at the 86 with this current length, they didn't actually need. Is that an accurate statement?
Let me, give me 1 second. So that variance was to construct the boat lift to the left of the dockhead to be 84 feet from the seawall, where 49 feet was permitted. And then they did remove and rebuild the dock in the same location and length.
But they have they received a variance for the length of the dock
No.
yet? No. Okay.
Would they need a variance if they were to build to the north, or to the south, I should say, to lower it on that side of the dock instead of at the
I
end of the
don't
dock?
believe that. I think you meet the setback requirement for that.
No, but
No?
the reason we need the signatures is due to the length setback, so it would still be beyond that. So if we moved it to the right,
Right.
it would still require, because it's beyond the 49, or I think it's 49 feet, or it's beyond it, way beyond it. It would require the south neighbor signature if we put the lower landing on the south side.
Is that because it would move it over and then it would be in the middle third?
It wouldn't be in the side, so in St. Pete Beach, you have to be in the center 50%. It wouldn't be in, it would stay within the center 50%, but it would be on the length setback. So it would still, when it's beyond the length setback, it triggers both neighbors needing to sign.
Yeah, because you'll think of like the shorter little rectangle, like if the dock goes out or the back, so it would be within this rectangle, but it would be beyond
Right.
that inner parcel, like
Length.
the envelope.
Lengthwise, right. Okay. Anybody have any questions?
I do, Mr. Chair. I have a couple questions for the contractor and a couple of my standard questions, you permitting, of course, for the property owner. So, sir, you talked about you built the original dock. In fact, you built most of the docks out there. I think Edge Marine is only about 2/3 of them. Why didn't you have this conversation, or maybe you said it and I didn't hear it, this conversation with the customer when you originally put the dock in and you had to get a variance anyway?
So when we did the dock, the dock was completely out of commission. Like there was busted piling, framing, decking missing. So the dock wasn't being used much. There wasn't a boat lift out there like there is now. So now that there's a boat lift there, the dock's getting used a lot more. You can kind of go out there and you realize if you would have done things, you could have done things different if you would have been using it more back then. So it's kind of it is a hindsight situation, but when the dock was built, that made the most sense for the way he was using it at the time. But now that there's more use of the dock, it's been, and we've also built it a foot higher. It wasn't that high to begin with either. So now with it being higher and it being used more frequently, that's kind of where the.
So certainly I like to follow the city's guidance because they work hard on these things, but I do not believe that I am here to just always vote the way the city recommends.
Yes, sir.
Is there any consideration for, what I'm trying to say is, I understand that's called the washing machine out there for a reason.
Yes, sir.
Is a 6-footer necessary, or wouldn't a 4-footer work with something like the Nifong's dock?
I've seen that one. The reason for this, it's a good question. The reason for it being 6 feet long is that since the dock is a foot higher, we build the lower landing probably 24 inches below the top of the deck, which would put it a foot below the seawall. So in doing that, we make our steps 8 inches tall. So you'll need 3 steps out there. So when you build those steps, it eats into the usable deck space, and you need to have enough space to step. So that's where the 6 feet comes into.
So you're not anticipating doing full width steps,
No,
though,
sir.
is that correct?
No, sir.
So the neighbor's dock, and I think you did that, that looks like it's a 4-footer. And I think the height is the same.
That one was, so the city made us go, or not, sorry, not the city. The county required us to go to a certain height out there, I believe, because of seagrass. So then that was after we went through the permitting process here with the city of St. Pete Beach. So that one, just the way the design worked for that one, it worked for the neighbor. He also was able to get both neighbors' signatures, so it didn't
Matter.
require us to come to this.
Right.
Yes, sir.
So on 2431 East Vena, I believe that's another one of your docks. I have a photo of it.
Did you show me the photo?
Pardon me?
Can I see the photo?
Yeah, Mr. City Attorney, is it okay if he,
That's fine.
you want to come up and take a look at that? Let me know if that's one of your docks too.
Yes, sir.
So is that a 6 or an 8-footer?
Oh, that one was a while ago.
Put the picture.
Because that sticks out in the channel a good bit.
That, I don't remember. That one was probably from 3.
If you want to look at
Yes, I do, actually.
that one, from a boater's perspective, that one is out there a bit.
Yes, sir.
And once again, I don't know if it's a 6 or an 8.
We do quite a few. I don't remember exactly.
Okay.
How many stairs down?
Actually, can I see that?
Yeah.
An educated guess.
I mean, I didn't want to tie up to somebody's dock with a tape measure. I'm not sure that would have gone over very well.
He's here if you want to answer. I think that's a 8. Oh, no, wait, that's, hold on. No, that's not his. That's another one. That's right down there. That's Jack's. I think that's 8, would be my guess.
I would hope so. I don't know if you want to,
No, that's okay.
anybody else want to see that? Okay. Okay, that's all the questions I had for you. I would like to ask Mr. Eagleston just a couple standard questions that I ask everybody, assuming I don't get cut off when I ask them.
Were you sworn in, sir?
No, sir.
Okay. Jenny, do you mind?
Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the information or factual representation that you are about to give to the board is truthful?
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, so
Yes, sir.
this
I'm,
Just a second,
I'm
could you
Peter,
state your name?
Peter Eagleson. I'm the homeowner of 2191 East Vina Del Mar. I've been a Vina Del Mar homeowner for 34 years.
So you have some existing variances for your pool and the like currently open, is that correct?
Permits for my pool, yes, sir.
Only not variances?
No, sir.
Okay. And have you ever had any building violations on this property?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for the homeowner?
No other questions?
I will state that I have a friendly relationship with my neighbor to the south.
Great.
Excellent.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there any audience comments? Anybody in the audience that would like to comment for or against? Nope. Okay, not seeing any. Do we have any discussion? Any more discussion between the board?
As I previously indicated, normally I would, give the benefit of the doubt to the city's recommendation, but I'm not here to always follow that. I do recognize that this is a safety issue on that particular waterway. Of course, we don't want to create a safety issue for boaters, especially somebody boating after dark at a Christmas parade or, coming back from 4th of July or whatever. But from my perspective, I do think this is a legitimate request by a longtime neighbor. And I would be inclined to support it. I was a little concerned about, I'm still a little concerned about a 6-footer. So I would say my only reservation of recommending that we approve this is the 6 feet, but the expert said that's what they need. So that's just how I feel on it. I know the waterway, I'm an avid boater. East Vina Del Mar is some of the most beautiful lots in our city, but they're also very difficult lots to be a boater on. I do think that this is unlike many of the applications that we see where people lay it on thick sometimes. I do think this is a legitimate request for safety purposes. So that's my comments.
Okay.
I would, initially I was thinking this was a case where they're just pushing the limits, right? They've already got a dock that is extending, but after I learned that the prior variance was actually for the dock or for the slip versus the length of the dock, and I would agree, I wouldn't feel, we live on the water as well, we have a lower dock, I wouldn't feel as safe with my children on the dock if there wasn't that lower spot. So I can acknowledge after having used the dock more that became evident that it would be a
Especially
better,
if you paddle
better
board.
design. Yeah, to be able to get on and off the board, for sure.
And another comment that I have is, I think 6 feet is very reasonable. 4 feet's really tight. When 2 or 3 people are on a dock, 4 feet wide is not very wide.
Okay.
So, okay, we'll close that, and if we have any motion, or a motion for this case?
I'll make a motion that we approve the variance for the 6-foot dock extension.
Case number.
Yeah, if we could include in the case number.
Case number 23086.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Take a roll call.
Member Small?
Yes.
Member Chase?
Yes.
Member Garshaw?
Yes.
Member Mulholland?
Yes.
Chair Bomar?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Do I get 2 votes on that? Just joking. Okay. We'll move on to case 23072, 2007 Pasco Way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So before we get started, any ex parte communications that you'd like to disclose starting?
I drive by it every day, and I've noticed what they're looking for and how I think it would affect. So yes, that's my ex parte.
Okay, so site visit.
I walk by it usually at least 4 times a day, coming and going. But I did do a specific walk into the parking lot one morning. I was also contacted by 2 neighbors, and I received the 3 emails that were provided by staff when I arrived here today. And that's my
Thank you.
No ex parte except for the information
Okay.
provided.
Site visit and information provided by city.
Okay,
Same site visit and letters received.
thank you. Is that sufficient? Okay.
Okay, if I may have the presentation, please. Okay, our last case of the day, variance case number 23072, located at 2007 Pasco Way. For an unnecessary and undue hardship variance, Kyle Bass, Weber, Crab and Ween for Column Properties LLC requests the construction of a roofed open porch extension 12 feet by 28.67 feet of overall dimensions, 11 feet 2 inches high, to create an approximately 300 square foot covered ride weight area that will encroach entirely within the required 25-foot secondary front setback, while maintaining the existing 1.67-foot setback where 25 feet is required, and requesting relief from Land Development Code Section 15.7B2. Listing of exhibits. Okay. Property is highlighted in green, currently a restaurant use, Red, White, and Booze on the corner lot, waterfront parcel located on Pasco Channel to the east, single-family residence to the north, and another commercial restaurant, The Wharf, to the south, and commercial uses to the west. Property is located within the CG1 Commercial Zoning District, CG on the future land use map. And here is a survey of the property, again, not to scale. This is a portion of the site plan showing the proposed front additions in the rectangle. I did want to show you, I did draw in the required 25-foot setback so you could see where that setback would actually be if met compliance. Request detail again. This is just the zoning table that was included in the staff findings report, so it just gives you overall view of the CG1 and what it currently meets, requirements, and proposed. Here is the proposed front elevation with the new covered porch areas, and also proposed floor plan, also included in the submittal packet. So with this one, this application, they did receive prior variances and prior approvals. Variance case number 23018 was before the board in 2023 with conditions from the Board of Adjustment for removal of the of the existing non-conforming 6-foot-high wooden fence and installation of an 8-foot-high wooden shadow box fence that exceeds the maximum permitted height of 4 feet within the waterfront yard. And that was relief from Land Development Code Section 6.15. It did have 2 conditions: applicant to retain and/or install curb stops for each parking space along the southern property line, and applicant to ensure that parking spaces will meet the minimum depth requirements and drive aisle width as required by Land Development Code 23.11 and inspected by zoning prior to final inspection. In connection with building permit 22-02218, a site inspection requested by the applicant and completed by staff revealed that the wheel stops along Paso Grow Way right-of-way will need to be removed as the parking spots are not fully contained within the property or meet the dimension requirements, which may then alter the parking layout and parking calculations to be reevaluated to make sure it meets its minimum parking spots based on the square footage. Property also received a conditional use permit number 23034 on 9/11/2023. City Commission did approve a conditional use permit with conditions for the following: the request to allow the continued use of an approximately 20-foot by 48-foot, 960 square foot Class A dock addition used for drinking and dining that was erroneously approved without a conditional use permit, and to also request to establish an area to play live music on the outdoor dining and drinking deck. I'm going to bring you onto the property. So noticing was completed as required. It is again a corner lot, so signs were posted both on 21st Avenue and Paso Grow Way. Here is the front of the existing building. There currently does exist a smaller covered front porch area that is roofed but open. This is the parcel to the south, the Wharf Restaurant. Looking north is single-family residences. And here is also just the intersection of 21st Avenue and Paso Grow Way. And then looking directly across Paso Grow Way to the west, which is also another commercial use. Just some different vantage points. This is the current parking lot. Another view looking south. And then up near the front of the building and close views of the existing porch areas. So currently, I don't know if the door is really utilized at this point, but they do have a bike rack where I guess it's so close to the building the bikes couldn't park in the bike rack, but just an observation. This is the existing cooler that was installed on the property. It is looking, and the applicant or the homeowner or contractor could speak about this, but I do believe it's to be roofed by a future permit. Here's looking north. Okay, looking east over the outdoor seating area and the new shadow box fence that was approved by the board. And current landscaping of the property. I did take some views from the north on the sidewalk just to see where the current roof line is in the Vina, the masonry fencing or wall there, just so you could see what you could see from the existing height. And then just also another view coming down the bridge on the sidewalk. And the variance criteria and comments also located within my site findings report. Because of this was commercial, it did have to go for a technical review committee, which did have comments. It was held on April 3rd of this year, and there were several planning and zoning transportation comments that were discussed with the applicant, the property owner and contractor, and it was determined that the site lacked design and landscaping items required by the Land Development Code, and some of which may be included within this presentation for testimony to be provided from either the applicant or owner, just for the record. So within the TRC, we would like, and comments based off of that and of this review, we would like this, the applicant to comment and provide testimony on the following. The applicant should provide further testimony as to the hardship faced in terms of the necessity for this proposed covered roof waiting area relative to the use. The applicant has the right to maintain their non-conforming structure, as is the case for others in the same situation, but this information is requested to pertain to the necessity of the covered area relative to the use of the restaurant. The applicant should provide testimony sharing details on open permits or current construction, addressing any future changes that may be proposed for the restaurant or site that may include the use of space that are not covered under this scope. The property has undergone significant improvements over the past few years pertaining to installation of a walk-in cooler, new dock seating areas, and fencing, among others. Addressing future project proposals holistically with this subject development will enable a more thorough understanding of how the space will interface with those potential improvements. The proposed site plan alterations of the current site improvements outlined and with my comments below. The parking lot striping on the site does not match what is currently on site. The applicant should confirm the new site layout with restriping is intended to be installed under this scope. The proposed relocation of bike rack to be shown on the site plan. Colors and materials should be described, but if a color elevation is not available, provide a color board with references. Recently, a photo opportunity or prop, which appears to be metal section of a ship, has been installed near the front entrance of the building. The applicant should provide details on relocation or removal of the element under this scope. So when I did go out and do my site visit that had been removed, I would just request some information on the proposed, if it is to return, proposed location, that may be reinstalled. The applicant should indicate if any railings are to be installed along the front of the additions or if intended to be open. The planter and landscaping beds currently contain minimal landscaping and should be supplemented. A landscaping plan should be submitted, and if additional areas of landscaping can be identified, additional planting should be installed. Land Development Code Section 22.6 requires a specified percentage of the addition cost to be supplied on landscaping, and if the site is deficient, to landscaping. Staff requests 1 square foot of landscaping to be provided for each square foot of building floor area added for properties that are deficient to landscaping. So if we don't go by a number amount, if we just look at the square footage that's proposed, we would kind of look to have that located in landscaping elsewhere on the site, if that provides further clarification for that. Applicants should provide details on the proposed use of each addition, because there are 2 separate areas that they're looking. One is definitely entirely within that 25-foot yard setback, but then there's that other covered area. And if any amenities such as seating or tables are to be provided. The plan should be revised to address the following comments. The plan set sheet 1 incorrectly identifies the proposed length of the covered ride weight area as 20.67 feet, where the dimension should be amended to 26.67. Plan set sheet 2 identifies the additions as a covered ride weight area and a rain shelter, whereas the construction plan sheet 4 identifies them as a covered ride weight area and covered maintenance area. Plan set sheet 3 roof plan also provides the elevations of the building. The front elevation does not include the door that is currently to the right of the front entrance, and the floor plan sheet 2 does not include information if the door is to be removed, as it indicates a solid wall, which is not correct. So just some testimony on what is proposed. So the staff finds that the applicant has addressed some of the hardship criteria, but does not find that the applicant has thoroughly demonstrated that denial would result in deprivation of an integral and necessary aspect of their business in a manner that creates a hardship. Due to the lack of support within the submittal documents, staff recommends requesting more information from the applicant. If the applicant cannot provide substantial evidence through testimony, staff finds that the proposed variance relief sought does not advance the purposes of Land Development Code Section 1.1 or granting the variance from the Land Development Code Sections 15.7B2, and staff does recommend denial of the request. However, should the applicant in order provide additional information to satisfy the board that substantial and competent evidence has been provided and look favorably on the application on the relief request, the board may want to consider the following conditions. The roofed open porches to be constructed as per plan submitted and may not be later enclosed or utilized as a service area without obtaining a subsequent variance and shall be utilized as a waiting area only. Landscaping plan shall be submitted, and if additional areas of landscaping can be identified, additional planting should be installed as per Land Development Code Section 22.6 and requires a specified percentage of the addition cost to be supplied in on-site landscaping, and if the site is deficient, to landscaping. And again, that's where that, or the 1 square foot of landscaping be provided for each square foot of building floor area added for properties that are deficient when viable. Plans to be amended to reflect the prior changes that I requested by the board or staff, and site improvements to be installed as per plans. We did receive 3 letters in objection with regards to this request.
In regards to those letters, Kristen, many of them reference the not being compliant with current CUP and other permits or variances provided. Can you give some context to that activity?
So, CUP I can.
Okay.
It was approved in September. There's a federal case challenging one of the conditions, along with the sign ordinance that's currently in court. It has not been resolved. It's pretty much all I would like to say publicly.
Okay. Is there any board comments to Kristen or questions?
I have a couple questions. You may have addressed this, ADA parking. So the 2 plats that they provided, I don't know if it was staff that did this or they were provided, the business provided them, but they're like pieces. But in the 2 pieces that depict handicap parking, neither of them reflect what's actually there. I'm not talking about striping, I'm talking about handicap parking, ADA. If you go down to that facility right now, is it ADA compliant? Because I don't know if either of these are ADA compliant, but I know what's there now.
I believe our former transportation planner did work with the applicant on getting ADA compliant spaces. That was also required as a condition of the CUP. This would be, the plan that is showing before you would have some alterations where staff was very concerned. As you go by when they are busy, it is kind of like a free-for-all where people are parked. And we wanted to provide enough area that people could back out and be able to get back on Paso Grow Way. And so we did work with the applicant trying to revise a revised parking plan. I will tell you, as far as parking spaces go, it is kind of an unusual parcel because he has on-site parking. He also has boat parking with the area on the water, and he has another adjacent parcel on the west side of Paso Grow Way.
Next to Shaner's.
Yes, correct.
Is that deeded the same, though? Are those properties both on the same deed, or are they separate properties?
That I don't know.
We can wait till they come up to ask that question, I guess. Sure. And I don't have a problem with that, but it then creates the issue of, well, if one property is sold, much like some of the things that have been going on in the city on a larger scale, with multiple deeds but one request, and that's all fine and good until somebody sells a property, and then you end up with a severely non-compliant property, and then we're here forced to grant requests for the new buyer because we feel bad for them. So I think that's something that when they do their presentation, we should ask if they are, I would like to know that.
Absolutely.
So I know there's been a bunch. How many previous variances has this property had?
I believe just the one.
Just one for the fence?
That is correct.
Okay. Are there open permits or variances on this property?
There are open building permits on the property. That is correct.
For?
If you give me a moment,
I mean, I can ask them when they come up.
I mean, we can double time it. I can look that up for you too.
For covering up the freezer, I believe.
Pardon me?
Covering the freezer?
The roof.
She said that's later.
Okay.
I mean, there's been a lot of shotgunning going on there. I mean, I know you use the word holistic, I'll use shotgunning, but it means the same thing. I think yours is just a little more diplomatic. And before we vote on anything, I just want to understand some of this.
Okay.
I wasn't here for any of the previous requests.
So if it's okay with the board, while Kristen gets some of this information, would you like to hear from the applicant's representative?
Do you want to,
Please.
did we get the ex parte part done?
Yeah.
Yes, we
Okay, that was, okay.
Huh, made me question myself. No, we did.
we did.
If I may, question you on your question. Is that the concerns for the parking spaces available for the deed across the street? Is that why you asked that?
Well, one, the reason I asked,
Because that's used strictly for parking right now.
right,
correct?
but if you look at one of the plans, like I say, there's multiple plans, in it, or there's at least 2 plans in here. One of them shows that this addition will result in losing parking spots.
It's a good question.
And that's
It is.
not how it is.
I'm not familiar with any unified site plan, none of that, but I'm sure the applicant can speak to it.
Kristen, is there, on that note though, is there a minimum number of parking spaces that need to be available to the patrons?
Yeah, that is based off the square footage, and I do think I have that somewhere, which
And
I
if they
can...
are to lose, I guess, I don't know, I'm making it up too.
Yeah.
Is that going to still provide enough parking spaces to the square footage of
So,
this place?
And that's why I asked the
Yeah, so
question,
yeah.
because if they are saying we have enough parking spaces available using another piece of property, and then they sell that,
Right.
then they're not going to be compliant for their number of parking spaces available.
I would have to review the numbers for that. I think it was reviewed in connection with having both. It's an excellent question. I think off of just not doing the numbers, most likely would not have enough. It wouldn't be sufficient.
With the,
Without that
with
other...
the 2 adjacent parcels, or if there's one, I don't know, with the actual restaurant and the parking lot next door, I don't know if that's considered all.
So across Paso Grow Way, that separate isolated lot, which
Right.
was on the site plan, I do not believe, but I would have to verify that they would not have sufficient amount of parking on that one parcel that we looked
Okay.
at.
Okay.
Yeah, and they also, just to be part of the record, on that separate parcel is their dumpster enclosure as well.
Okay, so really that needs to be included as a part of this whole establishment, that parcel across the street?
Yeah,
Or they're not in compliance with other things
right.
than just parking?
Yeah, they
Okay.
wouldn't have their solid waste management, they wouldn't, and then also the parking.
Okay.
I can answer the open permits that they do have. 1, 2, 3. It looks like there are 5 open. 1, 2, 3 in review, one of them being the covered weight area, which was denied, so it's still an open permit.
The covered what, I'm sorry?
This porch area, this request that they have now.
What we're reviewing now.
Correct. So that was based off, of their submittal was based off our staff's denial.
What would prevent that property across the street from being sold, even if it threw them out of compliance? Is there something that would,
Currently,
yeah,
if we're not told about it, nothing.
okay.
Happens
So-
all the time.
Right, I know it does, I know, that's why.
And again, I don't know if there's a unified site. I mean, he may be able to speak, their attorney, if they've unified the sites. I have not been made aware of that. We do have a form that we utilize for these types of things when someone does assemble lots, for lack of a better term, and we have a standard unified site declaration that will require city involvement that's recorded against both properties. I can confirm that that has not taken place as I sit here today.
Are we ready to hear?
Yes,
Applicant?
We are.
would the applicant like to come forward? Please state your name and address.
Kyle Bass on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Collum and their company. I'm also brought with me our contractor, Paul, and then you can see Mr. Collins here as well. Neither one of them have been sworn in, so before they speak,
just in case. Jenny, do you mind?
Sure.
Thank you.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the information or factual presentation that you're about to give or present to the board is truthful? Thank you.
So I'd like to address the questions about parking and the unity of title first. Currently, first of all, great questions. We already thought about that, that may be a concern of the city because I believe Mr. Mulholland?
Close.
Close. I believe it would throw it out of compliance if one was sold separately. I think that is, we're going to try to take care of that with a unity of title. We haven't gotten there yet, but it is something that we're looking into to doing. Our position is that neither one of the two parcels, the restaurant parcel and that separate parking lot, that we wouldn't want to sell those individually anyway because of a potential compliance issue in the future.
Things change.
Sure, and that's why I was going to say the next point was if the board is inclined, we'd be agreeable to make that as a condition of this request for your exact concerns. So if that is a going concern, we can absolutely. It was, I don't want to say it was on the back burner, but it definitely wasn't on the front, but I can move it up in priority as far as the hierarchy of things that we're working on. So I think that answers it on the parking issues. The question about the handicap parking, the stripe, so we have I don't want to say too much because I think we have the issue resolved with one of our neighbors with the wharf. I think we have a fairly good relationship with the wharf. There was some damage that was inadvertently caused that we're working through regarding the parking. So we do have to pull the bumpers, the parking stops out. We have to resurface it, restripe it, and then put the bumpers back in. That is obviously a difficult thing to get the timing right, but the stripes are all put in by a company that does this, so it would be ADA compliant as far as the handicap parking is concerned. Trying to remember if there are any other comments or concerns. I'd like to address those first. If not, I can jump right into hardship. So,
How about just overall plan, master plan, because it feels very piecemeal?
it does feel piecemeal, and that's why I'm here, and I'm trying to get it wrapped up into one bit. So we have a lot of seemingly separate projects that are interrelated, and that's why I have Paul here. He's going to talk about the permits around for the cooler, for the dumpster, for the project of why we're here. If it's okay with you, he can speak.
Will he speak to the conditions that were not met on the previous approval with conditions attached? With the parking curb stops?
Okay, let me try to say it this way. There was a conditional use permit for outdoor music.
I think he's talking about the curb stops.
That wasn't a CUP.
No, he was talking about the previous condition.
The conditions with the fence.
Oh.
Which was mentioned
Better
earlier
for me.
by
Saving you, Matthew.
That's correct.
Unless you want to.
No.
I don't know if he can speak to those, but I can tell you the concern, if I understand the concern correctly, those have been addressed as it currently sits, and the two outermost westernmost curb stops have been removed to bring that into compliance.
Okay.
Correct. It's just the striping that's outstanding, and again, we have to resurface the entire parking lot, and then the striping will go in according to the plans that you saw here. I've been working with the city on that, and actually the striping, as you see it today, will be very different at the end of the project.
But if I may, that the most southwestern parking spot where there is the utilities that is adjacent there. That does not meet the depth requirement for a parking spot. I know sometimes there's a parking attendant that sits in there, but there is a curb stop there, and I do have seen and have pictures of a car being parked there. So I would request that that be removed, because I would not want, it is not a viable parking spot. It is.
Do you have a picture of it? I have no objection to it being removed. I just want to make sure that I'm talking about the same thing.
May I have the overhead, please?
Actually, while we're talking about the parking, we could probably pull up all the pictures.
Maybe I don't. Don't have it here, but I do have a picture.
How many parking spaces are you going to lose if this was granted?
I think we lose, do you want to go back?
Yeah, let me go back to the existing survey. That'll be helpful. Okay, so this is the existing survey, and it's kind of hard to see. But it looks like there is, on the northern side, there's the handicapped, and then it shows a full space and then like a really not a space because it overhangs onto the sidewalk to the west. So that's like a handicapped and a full space, so that's 2. And then on the southern part of that parcel in front of the dwelling, you have another handicap space, and again, you have it, they're angled, so another full space and another space. Because it's angled, it hangs over onto the sidewalk there. So staff was really trying to look out with this, and if we did a new one, that all the spaces would be on the property and not overhanging over the sidewalk, and make them compliant.
Christian, do you want to go to the next one?
Absolutely. The one I'm talking about, there you go.
Yes, this one's a little easier to see. So you'll see the difference to the northern portion. The northernmost, what call them 2.5 spaces, are gone. And then the southern part of the northern parcel will be a handicap and 2 ADA, otherwise standard size parking. And then down here on the southern portion, I think we may lose 1 on each side. But the depth, of course, would be correct, and once it's restriped. And that's also why I mentioned the unattached parking, which we will look into. We will seek unity of title. And there is actually one of the difficulties with getting unity of title on 2 properties is whether the ownership is similar or the same between the 2. And in this particular case, there's no mortgages on either property, and Charles owns, or Mr. Collin owns, both of them. So we won't have that hurdle. I do have to go through the county as well. So I think I start at the county, and they push it to the city. And then, so there's somewhat of a process there. I just don't see that it's going to be a problem to do it.
And when you say, just if I may, the unity would be for the property across the street?
Correct. The one that is currently the overflow parking.
Overflow parking. Okay.
Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay.
So going back to that one parking spot, it is shown on this site plan. See the no parking on the south?
Yes.
That is the one. It has the utilities. So there currently is a curb stop there, and it is being utilized for parking. Okay. So it would be rectified should this be approved.
Correct.
But it was also part of my permit or part of the approval and the subsequent zoning permit for the fence.
Okay.
So that is the space that is not a viable space.
Correct. Okay. I see what you're saying. You're talking down here in the corner?
Yep, right on the corner.
Yes.
It's very shallow deep because you have those utility boxes there, so it's not a conforming space.
Okay. Understood.
Mm-hmm.
I would submit that should be a condition of approval.
There you go.
That's kind of how our technical review went. I don't want to get too far into that, but the concerns such as this, fair concerns, they're acknowledged. We're agreeable that they're conditional, conditions upon approval, and I think you all know what that means. But rather than act as a complete bar to allow the property to be updated and allow the reason that we're here to be constructed, allow them to be conditions upon approval. Another one would be the landscaping or the colors. We're more than happy, of course, at this juncture of the construction. We haven't picked out the colors. I've spoken to my client and asked him what he anticipates those being. Of course, he says neutral, not offensive in brightness, or no neon colors, for example. But if the board wants to make that a condition upon approval, that's absolutely fine. I welcome that. I understand it. Same with the landscape. And we do have a landscaper that we have engaged with. But before the entirety of the project is done, it's difficult to see it, which I understand. But we have engaged with a landscaper. And again, that can be a condition on approval. So much green space, so much green canopy, I think, what we talked about at the technical review, which we could submit to the city and have that as long as the city's okay with it.
Kristen, and you were saying 1 square foot?
For every square foot of addition. So
So that would need to be in the motion.
yes.
And I had a question regarding that small parking space.
Yes.
Does the city consider any parking spaces for golf carts, since they are becoming more used?
We do consider golf cart and like compact, but there has to be a certain number as a base to be considered those. Yes, to be considered or to add those into the parking plan.
Okay.
So I'll move on. And then, of course, we're here as an open book. And then once I'm finished, I'm going to pass the microphone to Paul, and he can talk to you more about the open permits and the construction plan as a holistic view or in its totality. One of the questions that the city actually asked in their staff report was, what's the hardship? Chris, can you go to the front? Picture of the front.
Can I have the presentation, please?
Get me off the camera. That should be fine, yeah. So right now, I would refer to the front porch as more of an abbreviated front porch. It's really wide enough to only hold a few people. This building was built in the 1970s. I believe that porch was original to the original building. My client did not build this. And as the location and his restaurant has gotten popular, or more popular, and the more people go to it, they have realized that there's nowhere for the patrons to stand out of the weather, out of the sun, and out of the parking lot. Okay?
Great.
And this kind of dovetails back into the parking lot. So in order to ensure the safety of the people that they're inviting to eat at their restaurant, they would like to offer them a place out of the rain, out of the sun, and then most importantly, out of the parking lot for them to wait. The question was raised in the presentation whether there will be railings or not. Candidly, I would leave that to the city. If the city wants to make that a condition upon approval, whether or not they have railings, I've spoken with my client about it, and we're more than agreeable to put railings up. Ideally, we'd like to see what looks best for the area, but if the city prefers to have railings up, which would only further the idea of safety to keep people out of the parking, that would be understandable. As far as seating and tables, there will be no tables there. The seating would be minimal, but not for service, and the reason there would be minimal seating, I'd have to look into whether or not it would be required under ADA, but somewhere for you to get off your feet while you're standing there and waiting. Sometimes the waits can be lengthy, and you wouldn't want to stand out front while you're waiting for a table for an hour. Some people cannot. So I think there's a small bench there now. There may be some other seats. They haven't finalized that yet, candidly, but nothing permanent as far as no seating and no service out there, okay? It's not anticipated, and it's not thought to be or planned to be an extension of the dining room. It's not going to be a force multiplier as far as a revenue driver. It is a place for the a holding spot, if you will, to stand and get out of the way. So the hardship there is, without the variance, they could only ever have what's already there. I think with the growing area, I think it makes sense to update the building. It is an over 50-year-old building. It does make sense to update it, and part of the construction is because it is an older building and it needs to be updated.
Kyle, would it be beneficial that I bring up the floor plan that may help you?
Sure. Can you actually go back to, Kristen, please? There's one more thing I wanted to address. Well, at least one more thing.
Which way?
So one of the concerns was, well, I noted a couple concerns that you had. Somewhere. So the spacing, there was a concern on the measurement maybe being inaccurate.
Yes.
I think it's twofold. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's, excuse me. Pointer. Oh, look at that. So this section here, if you're looking on this, there it is. So this section here, which is already currently there, if everybody can see that, that's 20 feet and some change.
Correct. So if you look at 20 feet, but then if you look at that, I actually blacked it out, so not to be confused. That on the plan is 20.67.
I see what you're saying. Right, so it would be the 20 plus then the 6.7. Is that what we agreed on?
Yeah, it should be, yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're clear on that. And it also, along the measurements, so we've been calling it a 12-foot by 28-foot addition. It's a little bit of a misnomer. I would argue that it's significantly smaller in size than 12 feet by 28 feet, because if you can see here, the reason the northernmost side of our requested construction is 12 feet is because it's curved right there on that northern corner. So it's really a 6-foot push out, but because it's curved, that one side has to be 12 feet. So it's probably a little bit more than half of whatever 12 times 28 is in square feet. And with that, I'd like to address the plans. If anybody has any questions for me. No.
Sorry, the addition that shows that 18.33 by 8?
Yes.
Or 18.72? I don't know which one to be looking at, Kristen,
sorry.
on that. The other area of the other rectangle of addition, what's that?
That is also going to be a covered porch area. My understanding, and Kristen can correct me if I'm incorrect, that is outside of the 25-foot setback, side setback. I'm unclear. I don't think it needs to have a variance.
That does not need a variance. However, one of my comments was they were mislabeled. Like one said a maintenance area, and then one said a rain shelter. So it may just help to clarify what that would be.
Sure. That is going to be part of the wait area, the extended waiting area.
So it's all tied together.
It will all be tied together to make the front of the building more cohesive. The door, that was another one. The door that is on one picture, or is on the pictures but not on the plans. The reason it's not on the plans, we've already talked to fire. We've already talked to fire. The fire department, and that is not a safety concern to have it removed. That door is going to be removed and won't be there anymore. Did you want to, are there any questions? I'll still be here, but I wanted to see the mic to.
I will have a few questions, but you can finish everything that you want to present, and I'll ask you at the end.
Okay.
You may answer one or two of them anyway.
Okay, well, I'm going to see the mic.
Oh, you're leaving the podium?
Well, I'm going to be here.
He's going to be here. So
I'll be-
Let me ask you your
Okay.
questions now,
Yes.
if that's okay with you.
That's perfectly fine.
I just want to keep the harmony here. So, once again, the plans that we got, they're kind of cut up. And they clearly show the roof over the cooler, which Ms. Conan mentioned earlier. I just want to make sure that you'll state for the record that you understand that if this variance is approved, it is not for the roof over the cooler.
I'm not sure.
It's depicted in your diagram here, and I don't want there to be any misunderstanding that a roof appears over the cooler and that was approved.
Correct. I understand.
This is just for the waiting area.
Correct.
You will stipulate that.
I would stipulate
Thank
that.
you.
I would concede that, yes, sir.
Thank you.
I think if I may interject, the cooler, and Paul can elaborate on that, that was under separate permit, or is under separate permit.
Okay.
Okay.
A separate permit would be required for that.
Be required, right.
Yes,
It's not
absolutely.
an existing variance or permit, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, right. So we're just talking about the sitting, or the front porch.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I had one question quick. Kristen, that roof over the cooler doesn't require a variance, so,
No, it would not require a variance, but it would require a separate permit.
yes.
So that is also why, as part of my comments, I would just like to understand what may be also in fruition as part of the plans, just in case they may need to return back, or just so everybody is on the same page of what's intended.
You mentioned in your application, I believe it was paragraph 8, you referenced an adjacent business. What adjacent business were you referring to in paragraph, I believe it was paragraph 8 of your application? Yes. It's like the second paragraph, or actually it's the first paragraph, there's a comment, including the adjacent business. What are you referring to there?
It's number 8 of the criteria. Last one.
Oh.
As I read that, you're basically saying that you should be allowed to do this because there's an adjacent business that has it.
Well, yes and no. So hardship variances, as you well know, are looked at case by case. And because one hardship is granted for one property, it doesn't necessarily mean a hardship variance for another property is also granted for the same reasons. The reason I include that language, however, is because one of the conditions is to make sure it stays in harmony with the area, because the last thing you want to do is offend, right, Pass the Grill, as far as looks and the harmony of the environment. And so that's why I include that. Not to say, hey, because this individual has something, we should too have it. But it was more to say that the request that we're asking for the covered porch is something that's in harmony with the area. And I think more than not, the restaurants and the businesses in the Pass the Grill area do have some form of extended covered front porch area. That would be the purpose for that.
But they're not all in the setback, are they? And that's why I was wondering what your point of reference was there in the application.
No, that's it.
Because you're basically asking to go into the setback significantly so.
Terrific question.
I don't know who you're referring to there, but
So I'm referring.
I don't want to guess. I figured I'd ask you.
No, it's a great question. The adjacent property would be to our south, which would be the wharf. They have a covered front porch area. You are correct. They don't have a side setback of 25 feet. Our property is the only property that does, which is why we're here on the variance. The other properties, and I'm gonna mess the name, but there's a downtown area where there's other properties. They too have outside cover seating. There's one property on the right adjacent to the beach that has or had outdoor seating, like in the parking lot area. I don't know if that's still there or not, but it was.
I think they're in a different zoning district, though.
They are in a different zoning area. Again, not bringing it up to justify any other reason other than to say that St. Pete Beach and Paso Grill area specifically do have there is a harmony there to say there's an outside environment. People enjoy eating and sitting outside or being outside. The restaurants do have front covered areas, and although most of the restaurants or eateries that I've seen down here in Paso Grill area do have outside seating, we're not asking for outside seating, and we have no intention of converting that or building it in the future.
I believe I have one more question for the gentleman. So it's anticipated to be a waiting area, and there's already been some discussion that there'd be seating but not tables. I think I caught
Right.
that. What about serving alcohol?
There would be no service out on the front porch.
Would people be able to go out there and drink? I don't know the answer to this. I'm asking you or asking the city. I don't know. Would people be able to sit out there and drink alcohol?
So they wouldn't. So it would be
The answer is no.
Well, there you go. The answer is no.
It's not even city. I mean, you have to get permitted to serve alcohol through the state, and it wouldn't be part of.
I thought, not to interrupt you, but I thought during COVID and maybe that the government.
There was we were lenient in. I mean, people were drinking on our sidewalk right here during COVID, right? Just because of the spacing
All
requirement.
right, but that doesn't apply anymore.
Correct.
Okay, thank
Does
you.
not apply.
And one more question. What about live music out there?
I don't believe there is any intention for live music on the front.
Once again, would you stipulate that?
I'll stipulate to that.
Okay.
I just have one thing about the alcohol. So I'm kind of twisted here. If I'm waiting for an hour to sit down and I can't have a cocktail while I'm standing there, that seems like something that doesn't make sense, or whatever.
Well,
I don't know what the alcohol laws are, but I thought it was for their property.
It all depends on the site plan that's submitted to the state. At the end of the day, all right,
The reason I
you
brought-
designate areas on your business that you will and will not be serving alcohol.
But if you go into the bar and buy a drink and walk out on the front porch while you're waiting, that doesn't make it illegal, does it? No, I'm just questioning. Because it's common sense.
If there's someone doing an inspection with the site plan in front of them and no, then probably.
Well, I just don't want to restrict something that we shouldn't,
And I wasn't asking for a stipulation on that. I did ask for a stipulation on the live music.
You did. I gave it to you.
But on the alcohol, whatever the rules are the rules.
Correct.
They're not
but it was
going
a
to be
curiosity
serving, but
question.
if you've taken upon yourself to walk from inside
that's
and
what I would
walk out,
think.
it's not on them.
no.
Well,
Well, it is, actually.
it would actually be on us.
Yeah, it actually is on them, and I think the applicant, not to put words in his mouth, because he can correct me, but he said this is specifically a waiting area.
Right.
There is no service, there is no music. It is simply to get off the parking lot for citizens. And if the board sees favorably and is worried about those things, then we can proffer conditions and agree to those things prior to ending the hearing.
Okay. Did you want to have your contractor come up as?
I do, yes.
Okay.
And I'm still here for questions if anything comes up.
Thank you.
I'm Paul Carr, representing Carl Cullum as his contractor. My understanding is I'm here to go over questions for outstanding permits.
Yeah, and I'll say also maybe just the general master plan. Is what we're seeing, like, this is your plan for the next 5 years, or are there other things that you're anticipating beyond what we're looking at?
Okay. Yeah.
And if you can include in that, like, anticipated timeline for a project, that would be helpful.
Okay. So this is the master plan, would be to have this out there, to have the cooler covered, to put a nicer dumpster enclosure on the other property, and to restripe the parking lot in accordance to what we're required to do. That's kind of the master plan. There's other things that, with the music and stuff like that, that we're not touching on because that's completely not part of this. But that's the master plan, and to bring the landscaping, and to do the colors, and to put cladding on the cooler to where it looks more appealing than what it looks like now. But all of that we put, I believe, on this plan other than the cooler, because the cooler was on separate. So, and we did that per request. We put the cover over the cooler on this plan, showed the elevation of it so that you guys could see what it was going to look like in the future. And that's in order to shed light on that for you. As far as open permits, are there any questions on that for me?
What are the open permits? Or are there any current open permits?
Yeah, I know we had the open permit for the cooler, but that was taken care of and closed out. We had a stipulation on our set of drawings for the cladding in front of it. I know that.
Yeah, so that would not be closed out until that was completed, because that was a zoning requirement as part of that. That permit is still open.
Okay. So that was all per a meeting that we had with the city. We'd like to see, once this is in construction, what we want to actually do with that. Explain what?
What do you mean, what we'd actually like to do with that?
To how we would be cladding it, what material we'd be using, what colors we'd be painting it.
Yeah, so by the zoning permit that was approved, you were going to do some kind of like cedar siding. So now you're maybe, and I'm just saying, it could be
Could be painted.
but that was what was approved. So now are you going to enclose it now that you're putting a roof on it, which would change what the zoning condition was?
No.
Okay. So that's what I'm saying. Is it just a roof structure you're doing, and is it still open on the sides? Because it's supposed to be screened, right, instead of seeing that, the cooler. And that was the condition and the plans that you provided. So that's why I'm asking, would there be a change from that original design to something else?
No.
Is there a reason that the current open permits and projects that are outstanding can't be completed, or at least come up to compliance prior to an additional variance being approved for the property?
I think we were waiting to see if we can get this variance, how much more effort we're going to put into hiring a landscape contractor to give us a full design on it, hiring a designer for outside for the colors and things like that, and then redesigning that for you guys so you have a landscape plan. We put quite a bit of time and effort into getting just to this point. And not knowing if we're going to actually get approved, it's a good amount of money and time and effort to get here. So I think that's kind of where we hit a wall and a stopping point of how much more do we do if we don't know if we're going to be approved at all.
I guess I'm wondering, maybe to make my question clearer, like for the roof over the cooler and the parking lot areas, that was already approved condition when we had the fence that has not been done. Is there a reason those things can't be completed in the short term without having this variance approved?
They can, but it would require us to redo it again. So currently where it sits, I can't change that front parking lot without doing demo, without doing things like that. That would be part of this plan that we have here. So in order for me to comply with everything, I have to be able to tear some stuff out and change the parking, and specifically that side where the signage is. The other side, I believe we could change it all and restripe it. We were waiting there for the wharf, correct?
Correct, yeah, we're trying to get, the parking issue specifically, again, is difficult because we don't want to come in now and do the parking and striping and then have to come back in again and do it again. We've already done it once, it's now been messed up and we have to fix it, which I think works because it was messed up. Now we have we have to fix it anyway. But we don't want to have to do it 2 or 3 more times. If we can get the construction moving forward kind of cohesively, that would be the overall idea.
So may I ask a question? Just based on the sense I'm getting from the board. Timing-wise, hypothetically, this gets approved, right? What then? Like, are we talking 90 days? Are we talking 30 days, 15, 60?
I would say a construction project like this is probably a 3 to 4 month project.
Okay. In that time frame, is it your opinion or testimony that the parking and the covered roof can't happen until the construction of this portion, if it were approved, is completed? Or can they happen simultaneously? Realistically, I mean, just...
It would be during the construction process that we would be able to do that. I would...
I think the holdup on like the cooler roof and things like that are because we may have to submit an amended permit or something to that effect if we can't have the overall plan that we're trying to get. Is that fair?
Yeah.
And if I may, the cooler roof is not part of any permit right now. That still has not been applied for. That's not part of the open permits.
Correct. So we would have to actually get an original permit, which would be based on the look of it, based on the overall cohesion of the project. And if, for example, we can't get this particular issue while we're here today, then that would have a significant impact and change on the overall look of the project. So that's why it's seemingly in this, or it is in this order, so we can try to get the construction started and all going at the same time.
So we would be looking at this variance in light of sorting out parking, sorting out landscaping, getting a cooler permit, and agreeing to the usage being strictly a waiting area. Those would be all the types of conditions that we're talking about now, because this is not going to happen unless the grander master plan is occurring, which includes coolers and parking spaces and landscaping, correct? Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm not sure I understand.
I think you're asking if it's all going to be one project working.
That's what I'm hearing, is we can't complete one thing from a previous permitted item, parking, because it would have to be redone again. And then what Kristen's sharing is there is no permit yet in place for one of the items that's part of the master plan, which is for the cooler
Cover over the cooler.
cover.
Yep.
Okay.
The confusing part about this is there's also requirements in a CUP that has not been stayed that, to their benefit, there's a court case that everything's, I'm not going to say it's paused because of our position, but at the end of the day, there are certain requirements in the CUP that have not been done based on my impression, don't want to speak for them, is because of what's going on in court, to their benefit.
So if we look at this variance through the lens of compliance for the parking, compliance to landscaping, compliance to getting the cooler permitted coverage, and compliance to its use, is that what would make sense?
So I would agree with all of those except for the cooler permit. That would be, I think that's a completely separate issue. The only thing that would change on that would be the overall look or design of it based on the entirety of the project.
But that was my question. Is the design going to change from what was approved by zoning when the permit was issued? And that could, I'm just thinking that, yes, that could happen.
So I guess I'm confused because I thought you just told us that the cooler was under.
The cooler itself is there. The roof is not. The roof has not been approved. So the concrete, yeah, it hasn't been applied for. So the concrete pad which it sits on
We're currently talking.
was erected, and a permit then was given after the fact. It was applied for. Then the cooler came, which we do have a permit for. Part of the conditions for that cooler was it to be screened as per the land development code, which it was agreed upon. It was a cedar type slat siding that was going to be done. But my question is, when you come in for that roofed portion, for that permit, would that possibly change the screening? Like the posts and things for the roof, would it change from that, deviate from that original approval?
No.
Out of curiosity, do you guys have like a master site plan? Like, do you have like a plan of what you're trying to get to? Or do you just kind of, just out of curiosity, because I think if staff and the board saw, hey guys, this is our 2-year plan of what we want to do? I was just out of curiosity, or do you just?
So I think that's this, right? Is that because one of the main features of the build will be this the covered portion of the area over the front door, and if the city's going to tell us no to the hardship and we can't do it, then it would require potentially
Got it.
a redesign.
So maybe we pull that picture up one more time then, just to clarify the this that we're talking about. Is this the this, meaning you're talking about, this is your master plan, so there will be no parking on the north side there. There's going to be the addition plus the other addition that doesn't need a variance plus the covered area over the cooler, and then all the parking's relayed out like this with no parking down there on the southwest corner. And then we're talking about unifying this with the other parking area to satisfy all of the requirements, correct? Is that now what we're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, in the unity of title, just to be clear, and that's just something I wanted to offer, make sure that you all, don't know me, but if you make it a condition of approval, then obviously that holds me to a little bit tighter in your rounds. And so we're not opposed to unifying the titles. As far as I know and what I know about unity of title, I do know I have to go through Pinellas County. I've spoken with them before, not on this particular issue, on other matters. And speaking with them, I don't see it being a concern or an issue at all, particularly when there is no mortgage company. The mortgage company when you're trying to unify titles, they tend to be the problem. In this case, there's no mortgage company on either portion, on either parcel.
Okay.
So I don't see that being a concern or an issue.
I think some of the hesitation and frustration you're seeing, at least for myself, is we've granted a variance to this property with conditions based upon approval that have not been acted upon. And so I hear you, like that's a great offer that we have on the table, but I would feel more comfortable if I'd seen those been acted upon in the past.
Sure. And unfortunately, I can't change that. All I can do is ask that going forward, I would submit that those happened before my involvement. I don't know if that helps, but all I can do is ask going forward with the conditions in place that make you all feel comfortable.
Well, as Member Chase just stated, we granted you the cooler based on with conditions, and they have not been met. And we were having trouble to understand why you have to have this variance approved before you can finish your conditions.
If I may, the variance was for the installation of the fence, not for the cooler. The cooler was a separate building permit that is still open.
And the variance for the fence has been?
I'm still having issues with the parking.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Got it.
As far as the one car stop on the southwest corner, and then the depth of the parking.
Yep, the depth.
Right.
Yep, and the drive aisle and everything. When I went out and measured, we had spoken about that.
And that's why I discussed the issue that we have with our neighbor to the south. Conversations with that have been going well. It's just a matter of getting the timing to get it retopped and restriped in accordance with the city's plans, which is what you're looking at now.
Does anybody on the board have any more questions for?
Does the owner wish to share anything?
My name is Charles Collum. I'm the owner of Red, White, and Booze. I know Mr. Holland, Mo Holland. He passes by all the time. Basically, excuse my throat, I've been coughing quite a bit. Basically, we're trying to comply with everything. The way I see it, to make it about the roof of the cooler, about complying, getting that closed out on the cooler, covering it up, doing siding. It really, until you get the roof on there, you can't really tie everything in. You really can't. I mean, tie it into the whole building in the front. I mean, everything needs to work. As everybody knows, building a house, that everything needs to come into place. You can't put one piece over here and then do this piece over here and get it to look right. So it needs to, am I correct? So,
Well,
I mean, really.
with the plan that
We
was,
talked to you about this
Sure.
before, about the real way, and we'll comply to anything you want. But I mean, the siding, the cedar siding, I think is still going to go there, and it's still going to go across there, but we don't know how to end it. We don't know how to actually fasten it until the roof is on there, until the posts are there, until we see what we have. There's no way really to
Right.
do it.
but at the time of the permit, when it came in, because again, it was an after-the-fact permit, that there was no roof involved in that prior submission. So that came after, yeah, that's what I mean. So it may change, but what I guess I'm looking for aesthetically, it would be similar, or if it would be different, which may not be under the purview of the board, but I'm just trying to get on the record that there are sometimes changes that occur along the way from what was originally approved.
I think the original with the siding on there, the cedar siding, that's not going to change.
Okay.
It's just going to change to how it's going to be attached. Until we get the roof on there, we can't really do the cedar siding to make it look, I want it to look good for me and everybody else in St. Pete Beach, Paso Grill. We're really trying to make this this is our first restaurant, and it's been a challenge in so many different ways. Sometimes I've almost given up on it because of all the issues we're going through, and but I haven't given up, and I'm going to continue to do what I can to conform to everything I need to be. And I mean, that's basically all I have to say.
Would it make more sense that we have one small piece of a bigger plan that you need a variance on and why you're here, but really have a master plan presented, and then we really just look at this as an integrated part? Because right now we're like, we don't really know what this cooler is, or the parking, or the, all these little pieces that some are not even, don't even have permit requests yet for, but to have that really put.
Right. The only thing we don't have a permit request for is the roof over the cooler.
That's part of this permit.
It is part of this permit?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Okay. I don't know. I'm just,
yes,
it didn't
and
sound like it was,
it's
so,
like the
okay.
parking lots. Until we get the dumpster pad, a new dumpster pad done,
Okay.
we can't move forward with the parking. I mean, we've already striped it one time, paid to have it striped or whatever, and now what's the restaurant? Huh? No, not the Wharf. Next to the one they're working on. People.
Shaner's?
Used to be Shaner's over there. So those people have created a problem on that parking lot, even though they've done concrete, they're pouring concrete, closing up windows and so on, and now they've got concrete all over the new pavement. So we've already talked to them, they said they'll pay for that, but we can't really do that until the pad is in for the dumpster. And or we'll get concrete on the new pad we pour, so I mean, put on there. So, I mean, everything's a process, everything's, which is a pain enough.
Okay.
But
it feels like at every turn there's one more
obstacle in the way.
Go first, in trying to get the hardship variance request out of the way, if you will, to make sure we have that locked in, and we can continue forward with the project.
So, yeah, I'm just making a note of a lot of potential conditions should we decide as a board to look at this favorably, including, I don't know how to phrase this, so maybe I look to Kristen, this cooler covering permit.
Just to go back to that, looking at the building permit application that was submitted, the description of work was install new covered concrete entry, modify the roof line to create a new exterior covered waiting area, porch area for guests, includes framing, trusses, roofing, concrete, railing, and sidings. I don't see that under the description on the building permit application to include that roof.
That's our original application.
Okay.
We have since
Done a new one?
2 different times.
Team packet, okay.
We were asked to come up with a master plan, and I was going to apply for the roofing permit for the cooler separate, and I was told to place it on this permit. Therefore, I put it on my drawing,
Same thing with the dumpster pad. I was asked to put this on this permit, not apply separately, so I redesigned again.
And I think that was a part of the master plan, but I'm saying your building permit application.
So if I need to restate that in a new building application, I have not been asked to do that. I resubmitted these plans 3 times, so, but I have not been asked to refill out an application permit. All I've been asked to do is add, which we've done.
Okay. And I think that was part of, again, just understanding all the scope of the things you were looking to do, right? And I think we've had several discussions and meetings on that. And I did ask it so that the board could see that. Now, I'm just saying for the application itself, yes, the plans I see have been updated. I haven't looked through them, but just your original. So you may have to do a resubmittal if you want to include that on that to have that. Because I think let's see. Because the dumpster you do have under a separate permit. It's not this one.
I pulled that off because we were not in compliance with the dumpster.
Okay.
It sat and we were.
But that's what I mean when you're saying.
He was going to get a fine. So
Right. But when you're saying it's on the plans and then that should be part of it, the building permit application and the plan should be kind of married together. And I appreciate you putting them on as one so everybody can see what you're looking to do instead of, just having a separate plan for that, and that. And you could utilize it for several things. I'm just saying the one permit that we have was for this covered area.
The initial permit application was for
Okay.
that. And then I came in, we were going to apply for a roof over the cooler. And I was going to apply for a dumpster. And I was asked to put this all into one single plan and resubmit, which I did. I was not asked to refill out an application. If I was, the verbiage would have changed in that application as to what the scope of work is.
Okay. So that's just what I'm saying. You may want to pull out for that cooler a separate one just for that.
But it's still part of the master plan.
Right.
And we talked about this in our last meeting, that it needed to be done. We were holding off, and I don't want him to get fined. I'd like to get the job done as well.
Sure.
So
Okay.
we applied separate for that. That's been 2.5 months now.
I appreciate there's phases that happen to, and
It's very frustrating for me as a
permitting.
contractor.
Yep, okay. So I guess for the purposes of trying to look at this piece, it feels like there's conditions to be met that would say if we were to look favorably on this, it would be in light of a master plan being executed and approved by zoning and building for the additional areas that we've described on this master site plan, which is an additional waiting area, a cooler area, a parking lot, landscaping, and waste management with handling of that with the dumpster. So those 5 elements of the broader master plan, it would be under the condition that those are addressed and met according to the permitting process. In addition, the usage area would be agreed to and limited to being used as a waiting area. And there would be a unity of title that would be sought and put in place with that parking spot next to Shaner's. Does that sound correct?
I actually really like how you suggested we put it all in approval of potentially, if the board's going to recommend approval of the hardship variance, make it subject to approval of the master plan.
So I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, that's just a very long
discussion for.
Kristen, is that is that order the right way to go versus waiting to approve the variance until the other outstanding items that the planning board is working through are completed?
I'm just trying to think of each individual open permit is there. So there are some things I just was asking about the cedar enclosure and with the roof, it may change or tweak the design, right? Because they have to apply for that separately. It wouldn't be under the same, necessarily the same scope.
What you could do as long as there's no objection, and I would like that on the record for obvious reasons. You could require like a check-in date. Like within 90 days, it will come forward. That could be a condition. It happens all the time. Usually it's a year. But for something like this, where, and mind you, you can decide to go whichever way you want to go based on the criteria in front of you and the evidence provided. But we could legally craft a condition in which within 3 months, it doesn't have to be the owner, it could be the attorney, it could be the contractor. Someone comes in to a meeting and provides an update on A, B, C, D, E, where they are on the project. And at that point, you would be able to modify the CUP if necessary.
We would have no objection to that.
You have no objections to that? Okay.
Okay, it got longer.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
I understand they want to get everything done at the same time because you're bringing in all of these contractors.
Do we have any more questions? Do we want to close the?
Yeah, we want to close this part of it.
I was waiting until everybody
Let's go to
was-
our discussion.
Okay. If we don't have any more questions from the board, then we'll close that section and we'll see if we have some board discussion. Or, I don't know how we could make a,
I mean, aesthetically, usability, like I get what they want to accomplish. I think my hesitancy is just seem to be so many open items with this property in the city from a building perspective right now that adding something to the mix in this moment gives me a little bit of pause.
I don't know how we cover it in a motion. It's like a page and a half of.
Well, the staff did already provide recommendations that align to most of, I believe, what we've discussed in terms of landscaping, the roof, and all of that. And if we wanted to have if that was the intent to provide a motion that included that and adding on the check-in date, like I think that could be fairly easily done.
Okay.
But
Any other board discussion?
I just feel, as it relates to what we discussed on the unity of title, that if there is any motions to approve, that absolutely needs to be a condition. And I say that just because of everything I've seen that's gone on in the city with all the legacy issues with properties that were granted things at the time with single ownership, and then they were sold, and you end up with a bunch of buildings out of compliance, and in some cases these are big issues. So I would just say that if there's a motion to approve this, I would recommend that we absolutely include that, so that this doesn't become another one of those properties.
Yes, and this is, we have standard language conditions that we utilize that talks about declaration of unified site plan, which is a little bit more simple than what I think Mr. Bass was thinking, because it's just a document where two owners come in and say, we're unifying the site for development purposes. If we decide to separate it in the future, it's a recorded document, obviously. The city will be notified. We can't withhold approval. However, we are notified to ensure that what they are separating is not leaving a property non-conforming with things like parking and landscaping and minimum lot requirement. And if all of that checks out, then we will move forward. So there is a clause that we can include.
So we can entertain a motion if someone would like to make one.
Yeah, I don't know if we're ready for that, Chair, respectfully. Just because there was a lot of conditions that were, and it's not impossible. Trust me, I just went through 40 conditions yesterday through a motion, so it's very doable. But I want to make sure that we have consent, no objections if we are going to go that way, and I want to spell out everything that's discussed, if I may.
Please.
So number one, I have they proffered railings on the outdoor area. I'd like to just ensure that it's ADA compliant. I don't know what that entails, but I think that's stronger language than railings, but I don't know what the board feels about that.
That's fine.
Railings?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
You proffered railings on the
The city
outdoor.
is inclined to have railings. We have railings.
I think respectfully, we don't want to design your project. I just kind of wanted to know with the front elevation and just safety protection, there was bollards there. So,
Yeah, candidly, I would say railings should be there.
okay.
Okay, good.
For the safety purposes of keeping everybody corralled.
And you have no objection with that same condition, including the requirement to be ADA compliant?
Correct, yeah, no objection.
Okay. Then we have, and we can work through how to word this, strictly a waiting area. No outdoor dining, no music.
If I may, I have the roofed open porches to be constructed as per plan submitted and may not be later enclosed, utilized as a service area only without obtaining a subsequent variance, and shall be utilized as a waiting area only. And we could also add in there and not include,
Shall not include outdoor music.
yes.
Very well worded. And then I don't know how you all feel about the proffered conditions, the other two that, and mind you, this is just to get my notes straight in case we move forward with an approval, but again, this is your choice. I just want to be clear. How does the board feel about 2 and 3 that were proffered by Kristen? So one of them is related to
Landscaping.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And number 3 is more of those housekeeping issues when there was some issues like page 1, page 2, or sheet 1, things may have been mislabeled. I would like to see an amended, updated plan be submitted to reflect those changes. So
Yeah.
if should approvals go through, we're on the latest and greatest.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
So then 5, I have a, based on member Holland, declaration of unified site plan shall be recorded for, and I'll get the property addresses from Mr. Bass. But we're talking about what the old Giordano's parking lot, I believe.
Yep.
But limited to site plan, not title?
So
We were talking about unity of title and site plan.
So we do a bunch of different very long legal terminology. So we do covenants in lieu of unity of title, running with the land. We've done unified declarations of unified site plans for zoning purposes.
Okay.
I don't think, when Mr. Bass said this, I highly doubt he wanted to like replat them or anything that extensive. But I believe, Member Mulholland, your point was, whatever, if they put it together, we just don't want to be in a situation where they leave it non-conforming. Is that essentially, I don't want to speak for you.
I apologize, I was making a note.
No worries.
I think what you said, I want to make sure that the properties can't be sold, which would make either property, but I think we're principally talking about the restaurant property, as non-compliant.
Right.
Perfect.
And with the inability to become compliant unless they tore part of the restaurant down or something, which we know we're not going to make them do that.
Correct.
I've seen too much of that already.
Absolutely. And I think what this does for us is it's a recorded document against both properties.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I guess people could do handshake deals, but I'm highly doubt that would happen here. The title company would see it. We would have to be notified. They would have to get our approval. He would sign off on it, so he couldn't change his mind, essentially. And this is just a regular document that we've used for countless other projects.
And then the 90-day check-in?
I mean, it's up to you all. That would put us in July.
I have a question. How long do you anticipating getting started on this? Because it sounds like you're going to pretty much be closing part of the restaurant down for, I mean.
Question for you, but for me, I'm ready to start.
Okay.
6 months ago, I applied for a permit.
So if we grant this variance with those conditions, then you guys would be starting right away?
As soon as I get a permit, yes.
That is the thing, is the permitting process. You know, plans come in, they get reviewed, should revisions be required, but we are running a little bit behind for sure. I'm not going to be facetious on that, but, so that does take time. We have, you know, one building official and we have some plan reviewers, but it is taking a considerable amount of time, so I don't know.
120 days might be a little bit more a reasonable time. Shoot for something in that August or September timeframe, given the length of time before they'll even get a permit, you know, issued to do anything.
Right.
If we wanted to add that in, so.
Is that fair?
I'd just like to see some aspect of accountability in the conditions, given the historical.
We're ready to go. I've been ready
Okay.
to go. So, I mean, as soon as we have the permit, we'll start. It is going to affect his business, but there is access to his restaurant through the back area if need be. And that is ADA compliant in the back as well.
But within that time, I'm assuming all the parking stuff we've talked about that are on the sidewalk and stuff, that can be sorted out before another permit is issued. Yes?
Well, I don't know, I mean, if they're going to come in and apply for the covered roof area over the cooler, I mean, we do have,
I got to change the verbiage on my.
yeah.
Oh, I just thought there was 2 parking spots that are encroaching the sidewalk.
Oh, okay.
That need to be addressed immediately. That
Yes,
doesn't
yes.
require another permit. So I mean,
No,
there's
yeah.
certain steps that can be taken, and then
Yes.
we can all have this fun again if we wanted to in 120 days.
Candidly, the parking issue falls on me. I'm trying to work it out with our neighbor.
Okay.
Once we square that away, which I don't anticipate taking too long, conversation's been going great so far. But yes, that's when the parking will be taken care of. So,
Okay,
sooner rather than later.
okay, great.
It's up to you on the timeframe. The one thing I would suggest, and again, for the record, Mr. Bass, if you could. So this check-in would include language, just like it does for all of our, that at that point, based on the update, the board could modify the CUP.
CUP?
Or the variance.
Variant.
I was going to say,
Mission.
Gotcha.
Curveball.
well, I think they're going to need an answer, I mean, for us to say, and we're going to grant this, but change it in 120 days maybe, doesn't seem to me to be something that we'd be doing.
I think what you're granting is, so this is standard language that anytime someone has conditions that they have to meet, if they don't meet them,
Okay.
you can always revoke the variance. I mean, that's just in everything. I'm just saying, based on what I've heard today and the hesitation on whether or not these conditions will be met, respectfully, of course. Sure. It gives you all reassurance, and it also holds the property owner kind of to his word of doing the best he can in the next 120 days. Because if he comes back in 120 days and respectfully nothing's been done,
Right.
you're going to feel a lot different than if there's a unified site plan recording and there's permits for all this work and they've started the construction and, you know, things that they are just waiting to do. So that's just my suggestion on that language if we do craft something.
Okay, so we would need it in the form of a motion to carry forward.
Any objections to the 6 conditions that we wrote down? So I'll go through them one more time. ADA compliant, which includes railings. The 3 in the staff report, which you've read, right? Landscaping. Covers.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Declaration of unified site plan. Is there an issue with me putting a day requirement on that? I mean, I don't see why we couldn't do that in like 45 days.
I have no issue with that. No objection.
Within 45 days. And then within 120 days from the issuance of the development order, you will be provided an update on status of all open permits, including conditions in the variance, and the board may modify the variance at that time. And we can just go ahead and put a date of the July meeting, if that's okay. Or we can work on availability.
That would be August meeting for the 120 days.
120, thank you.
Yeah.
Now, I do understand, and I don't want to speak for, but I understand that there are issues with timing on permits, and I personally just ethically don't think that's fair to hold. We're busy. We have other things to do. So I don't know about that time frame. I don't know how realistic that is for you, how close you guys are to obtaining permits.
Let's do it this is quasi judicial, right? So first of all, no objection to the conditions that you just set forth.
Okay.
Secondly, if this is quasi judicial, I can always file a motion. It have to be in good faith. Of course, it couldn't prejudice anybody, but if one of the reasons for the request for extension of time was because we weren't able to obtain a permit for 3 months, I would think that would be received in good faith. So we can do it in that way.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Unless it should be 6 months. I mean, being realistically looking at it, I don't know.
All I know is within 120 days from now, at a minimum, you'll have a unified site plan.
Yeah.
So there'll be some progress.
And the parking issues should have been able to be addressed. Like there's other things that.
I would think, yes.
Okay.
So we still need it in a form of a motion.
Yeah. What would your guidance be on that?
If you are going to move, so if you deny variances, you have to do it for a specific reason. So it's your finding based on the testimony that they would have not met the criteria, right? You have to be very specific on why you're denying it. If you approve it, you feel like they have met the criteria, and the motion would be including the proposed conditions.
And we don't.
The 6 proposed conditions. You can just be, because we still need to craft them.
Okay. I'll make
It's based on the criteria. Sorry, go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve case number 23072, including the discussed 6 conditions.
I'll second it.
Roll call.
Member Chase?
Yes.
Member Garchaw?
Yes.
Member Mulholland?
So I appreciate what we've done and the cooperation of the applicant for the modifications. And I think it's progress in a good direction, and I'm happy we were able to get some of that done. But at the end of the day, from my perspective, it's not a hardship. So, no.
Member Small?
Yes.
Chair Bomar?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
Okay. Good luck, you guys. Getting back. Okay. Did you want to?
So we have.
You were
top. Yeah. Thank you, Chair. So we have some new board members, which I'm excited for. I think we appreciate what you do. It's hard being a volunteer member. At the end of the day, especially right now in the temperament, we'll be honest, there's a lot of, apps and social media, and it's every decision you make is watched by people. You may not think so, but it is. So I do appreciate what you all are doing and in your service to the city. Last year I did a workshop on quasi-judicial procedures. Remember, everything that you all hear is quasi-judicial, which is different than any other board. So there are certain ways to follow. I think we went through it today very nicely, but I also wanted to just kind of touch base on policy, procedure, what we should be doing, reminding you that it's the criteria that you all really care about, and analyzing those 4 to 8 criteria based on the variance itself. It's not, I don't like this person, or I like this person, and remember, the hardship is respectfully not a physical hardship, right? It's not, I'm old and I need an elevator. It's the property hardship, right? Which we have a lot of interesting configurations in the city, I will say, especially Paso Grill. But it's just some things like that I kind of want to remind you all on a yearly basis. So I don't know if maybe next meeting, I'm open to talking about it. I don't need more than probably 30 minutes. We could just add it depending on the agenda. I think we have 3 cases as just a very brief start off the bat, and we don't have to start early or later, if that was okay with everyone.
We have 3 cases for next month?
We have 3 practical difficulty cases, yeah. And it actually is on May 15th, so it's a little earlier because we amended the days
Right.
for May and June.
Wait, it's
so.
on-
Are any of them commercial or all residential? Kristen, were they?
They are all, no, they would have to be all residential.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, that's fine. I just didn't know if we had another situation like today. I consider that more commercial, what we just discussed.
Yeah, so
okay.
usually an unnecessary undue hardship is always going to be commercial. There may be other things, like the dock case was the same.
Yes,
but
it was.
Practical difficulty is more like single-family
Okay,
residential.
thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Does anybody object to coming in a half hour earlier?
Well, most of you have been here. This was a rather long meeting.
Unusual.
That's why
I'm like,
for us.
it's not involved.
But again, I think
Normally.
the questions, the healthy debate, this is the all like the purpose of this board. You always have to remember, these are not property rights. You're granting exceptions to the code. It's an important duty that you all have. Respectfully to all the other board members, this is the second most important board in the city, in my opinion. Just because it doesn't go anywhere from here. You are the final say maker and you are making decisions. So it's important to make sure you get everything on the record, because we get appeals and we have to deal with it. And all I care about is, did we do what we had to do as a board? So we can start at 2. I can just lead it off, or I can end the meeting, either one. Like I said, I don't need more than 30
I'd say
minutes.
let's end the meeting just in respect of the applicants.
To the applicants. Sounds like a plan. So we'll just add it as a
Workshop?
discussion item at the end of the meeting.
Okay.
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 So,
Anything further?
yeah, I'd like to revisit the issue that we had earlier.
I don't think this is a time to do that. We've been here for 2.5 hours, and I think if we're going to have a little discussion at the end of the next meeting, we can cover all that stuff.
Well,
Respectfully,
at the end of next meeting, well, for 2 meetings in a row now, you've cut me off. So does that mean we're going to do 3 meetings in a row, you're going to cut me off, and then talk about it afterwards?
I'm not trying to argue with you.
I have a right to ask any question I want.
You sure
that's
do. You sure
reasonably
do.
civil. In 2 meetings in a row, you've cut me off.
Well, okay.
Is there anything inappropriate, city attorney, that I have asked any of these residents?
Questions?
Excuse me a second. We can discuss this off of camera in a workshop environment, okay?
Off of camera, we still on camera?
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
Okay. All right, well, why would we not want to talk about it on camera?
So I think there's, when it comes to the policies and procedures, I will talk about it. I think there's questions. Again, I don't think there's malintent. Personally, I don't think it's personal. I think every now and then the chair has to run the meeting. If there's a question on relevancy, I would prefer you ask me, right? That's what I'm here for, is to advise you all. I think any question is a good question. That's just my standpoint. The reality is the applicant is asking for something. They default to staff 90% of the time. Staff is not their expert. They should have to ask or say something for what they're asking for. And I think, those are just fair things. So there's no bad question in my opinion. But remember, there's decorum towards each other. I mean, we all have to be, you guys are all colleagues up here. And if someone wants to speak, then he should speak or she should speak.
So we could have a meeting that goes till 5 o'clock.
You could have a meeting that
Because we
goes
want to rattle on about stuff that's, to me, is not necessarily
But that's
covering.
your opinion.
Yes, it is.
That's your opinion.
Yes,
I'm entitled to my opinion.
you are.
You're
I'm not cutting you off.
You're no greater. You cut me off twice. You cut me off 2 meetings in a row.
Okay.
I mean, how can you sit there and say that you didn't cut me off?
I'm trying to move the meeting along.
Come on, we're here for 2 hours. I mean, these guys were here to 12:30 last night. I mean, really?
Really? Yes,
really? 2 hours is like really, it's just really too
To
much.
cover
for
what
us.
we're covering?
We have
So,
a duty here.
if I can make a suggestion, I don't think what I'm hearing has to do with anything that will foreseeably come in front of you for a decision. So I would just go ahead and end the meeting and we can have a
I'm
conversation.
trying to end the meeting.
No, I would, I just think we
I
can.
don't plan on getting cut off 3 meetings in a row, Mr. Attorney.
And I think your point is well received, and I understand. And
I'm here to do a job just like everybody else is.
I agree. Every vote is equal.
And I'm not his son, and I'm not his employee.
Understood.
I don't know where this came from you. I've been trying to run a meeting and keep it in order and keep it going. Because we could sit
Can
here.
I make a motion to adjourn
Yeah.
today's meeting?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Roll call.
Roll call.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Adjourn.